this is our...
Oh, we are recording.
Yeah, we're recording.
5th video, right?
5th video. Let me get this a little bit further.
Raw, real, just like we like it. About other whatever things.
Yeah. So this is our 5th Q&A, I guess. 5th Q&A, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's another Q&A, and we have questions here from y'all that we are going to answer.
Do y'all vaccinate your kids? Well, we don't want the plague starting, so.
Yeah, so basically, yes, we do vaccinate our kids, but we do selective and delayed vaccinations. We don't want to overload their system too much, so we want to make sure, of course, that they're well, which I think most parents want to make sure their kids are well before they get vaccinations, but we also want to space them out, and so that if something, if they get a shot and then it reacts or something, we'll know which one it is. And yeah, so when Israel was 1 month old, we went down to Central America, so we wanted to make sure that during that process, and we came back a couple times, that at the appropriate times he had some shots that maybe were required for being down there.
For example, there was one shot that wasn't in his normal schedule, so we actually got an additional shot besides what he would have normally gotten if we were here in the States.
Just because we were traveling, so to be safe there.
Correct.
And then, yeah, you had a ton of shots before you went to Nepal.
Yeah, I think both of us grew up getting all the shots that we're required to for our whatever the normal CDC schedule is, and then both of us had to get additional shots. Me when I went to Nepal for 2 years, you with international travel.
Yeah.
Growing up.
So yeah, just to be safe. So yeah.
Yeah. So not against vaccines.
Okay. What are your Thanksgiving plans? So.
Are you asking them, or that's the question?
This is the question. The question is, what are your Thanksgiving plans?
Thanksgiving is very special to us because it holds a special place in our relationship. That was the first holiday we celebrated as a couple, and Jill came to Nepal 7 years ago, 2013, and we actually, once all the filming and everything was done and we recorded our goodbye, she stayed another week, and we had Thanksgiving together. We made Thanksgiving.
That wasn't in the show.
Yeah,
so.
It wasn't it.
Unless you've read our blog, you probably don't even know that, but yeah.
Yeah, so once we said goodbye for the cameras and Jill went away in the taxi, she came back. We spent another week together.
Without cameras.
Yeah, without cameras. And had Thanksgiving dinner together. We made Thanksgiving together. Very special time.
Mm-hmm. And then we've also had fun spending Thanksgiving in different countries. So Nepal was our very first Thanksgiving together. And then in Guatemala with some friends from church down there. And then, yeah, we've had international friends over here. So I feel like our Thanksgivings are just very international as well as American, of course, but.
Yeah, we spent Thanksgiving in, like Jill said, 3 different countries, and it's always something new and exciting, and we love including as many people as we can, except for this year, not as many people as we can
this year. So our plans for Thanksgiving this year are we're gonna have, Derek's mom actually will not be traveling, mom and stepdad will not be traveling to Oklahoma to see family on Thanksgiving, so we're gonna have them over and keep our limits under our Arkansas, our guidelines for less than 10 people or something, including our family. So his mom's Derek's family, and then maybe one other international family. We'll see. So yeah. Okay, so the other question, what are your views on courtship now? And if you could go back, would you change anything about your courtship, or are there things you wish were different?
So first, obviously we don't pretend to have it all figured out because we don't have children who are at that stage yet. We're young parents still, and even after we have kids through that stage, we'll be more experienced, but we still won't have it all figured out. So all this is basically theory based on our own experiences. So
yeah,
disclaimer there.
And I feel like there was maybe some misconceptions about our courtship, because it was definitely a little bit more played up for the show and all of that. So things maybe weren't as weird as they seemed. So we've had a lot of people ask us questions about our courtship, and I think
now the fact that she's saying courtship is because that's what you all would know it as.
Yeah. So we feel like, some of those views that people have may not be totally accurate. So basically we can clear up some of those, I guess, like
the views of the viewers on the show.
The views of the viewers on the show of our courtship. So that might be helpful. So like we did set our own, I think maybe we said that on the show, like we did set our own standards and rules, like agreed upon rules.
Yeah, we weren't given rules like here's what you can and can't do. We set those ourselves.
Yeah. Now we were encouraged by our parents, by my parents, to like make rules for ourselves that like we came up with on our own. But we probably would have done that anyways.
That's just a good idea generally.
Like in Nepal after we started courting.
Mm-hmm.
So like that, let's see,
one thing we might do differently is to call it a courtship, just because that has, a certain archaic feel to it. And not that everything like old is bad, but it just like evokes these ideas of strange things like being
for you probably
maybe
less for me because I grew up hearing it a lot, but
I grew up hearing it from my grandpa who said I courted your grandmother in this truck.
It's weird, but like for me it's not as weird. It didn't sound as weird I mean it did, like even on our own courtship we didn't prefer to call it courting. I think the TV cameras of course wanted it to be courting and it be this weird thing, but like we preferred to call it like dating with a purpose or whatever. But another thing too that was, I've got my notes here, that like was different maybe perception wise on the show versus in real life, was that my parents were not on all of the Skype calls. Like literally they popped in a couple of times. Less than 1% of the time they were on the calls. Actually, the first 2 times we Skyped, my parents weren't even home. Like
for 11 hours on our.
I cleared it with my dad first. I was like, are you cool with like me Skyping with him? And he's like, yeah, I think that's great. You can get to know him more, like see him and stuff. So our first 2 Skype calls totaled 11 hours. They weren't even on either of those, I don't believe. My grandma was home, I think.
Your grandma was home, but she wasn't on the Skype call.
No. Yeah. I think maybe I introduced her to you on the second one. Yeah. Maybe. I don't even know.
We had 11 hours of our first 2 calls. Like
by ourselves.
By ourselves.
So we definitely had time to talk. Now, they were on the group text. That was like accurate in the show. But I really feel like they were only on it until we got engaged. But I feel like that was more just literally so they could be in the loop. I mean, because you can imagine, me and Jessa were both in courtships at the same time. So, they wouldn't have even had time to like read all the text messages going back and forth. It was more just, hey, if something comes up and we want to check, we can just like scroll through. And like they were on the loop. But
like we waited to hold hands until we got engaged, but that's something that wasn't like a rule. Like we could have held hands before that. We just didn't. And that might actually be something that I would have done differently, that we could have done differently. Was just
I think maybe we would have,
Yeah, I mean, I was 25 when we got engaged. Like, I don't know why I wasn't holding your hand already. So, my bad.
I don't know. Was it encouraged by our parents? I'm not actually sure.
No, it was.
It may have been highly encouraged.
You were the first daughter who got married, so like, it was just because I never grabbed your hand. We never.
No, you would have had to clear it with my dad. He totally would have.
You think?
Yes.
I just now found that out.
This was not in my notes. I was not even this.
This is the real part about it, but.
Yes, I think he would have made you clear it with him.
Okay.
Probably.
What if I just did?
I would have been like, wait.
And you would have. Would
is
you have been the
kosher or not?
What if I just said, it's okay, trust me?
No. Anyways,
moving right
okay,
along.
So about the
whole that wasn't a set
time
rule,
to talk
though.
thing.
Yeah.
I think that we had like plenty of time to talk, even before we were courting or engaged, because we Skyped before. That was 2 months before we even met in person, before we like were official or anything. So I think that's important. Yeah, I think that's important to know, is like, even if you want to do like a full-on like courtship type thing, it doesn't mean you can't have conversations one-on-one with that person to get to know them before you even want to court them, because you have to get to know them. Like,
yeah, otherwise it would be weird if you're just like, I don't know you.
Yeah, so
You're
I
my
think
boyfriend.
that's a little bit of a misconception. So I think it's important actually to have some deep conversations before you want to date them, court them, whatever. So yeah, I think that if we were in the same room, it was actually almost harder to have those one-on-one conversations because sometimes, not always.
Get anything accomplished?
Well, yeah, that too. But because we had chaperones who were like across the room. Now they did not listen. It was not like enforced that we didn't want them to listen in on our conversations. It was more just like the physical proximity that they were just supposed to like keep tabs on and whatever.
Sometimes they would just.
But if you want to get away with something, really, if you wanted to like do something, you could have. It was just more of like. Just for ourselves, like
you're the one
did
setting
want
that in place.
That is something that we wanted for our relationship, was just another set of eyes, just to, if anything, say like, hey, I'm here to vouch for them. They didn't do this. If somebody tries to say you did something, I don't know.
More for accountability, so no one could accuse you of something and say they did or didn't do this. That's
and then to keep yourself in check too. I think we wanted that, but anyways. Okay, so basically with the whole courtship thing, no, there's not anything like with our courtship.
With our
anything about ourselves that we would want to change, other than maybe like what we called it.
Yeah, we called it that for the show, but
my parents called it that too, but like courtship versus like dating with a purpose or something.
Well, I courted dating growing up, but I just didn't call it that.
No, you didn't.
I mean,
it was not the same thing
because of the involvement.
But we would just maybe call it more like, I don't know. We called it dating with a purpose too.
Yeah, maybe I should have called it dating with a purpose.
Yes, maybe. But we're also glad about a lot of things. I think like one that probably the biggest one for us was like we didn't have sex before we got married. So
yeah, I think
appreciated
that.
We were both encouraged
yeah.
growing up not to do that.
Well, I think people say, "Oh, you shouldn't worry about that. You should try it out beforehand." But then whenever you fast forward to your wedding day or rewind your wedding day if you're married now, think about like, are you more glad or less glad to find out that someone hasn't had sex with anyone? Would you be more glad if you found out that they were not a virgin, or would you be more glad to find out, maybe there's certain things we don't know?
Doesn't mean you're not going to be nervous or
something.
something.
No, it doesn't mean there's certain things like they wouldn't know, but like
find out.
You're probably more glad. You're not going to be upset that you're marrying or you yourself are a virgin.
Yeah, so I think, we're grateful for that, and doesn't mean like if you're not a virgin that like that's...
No, it's not like,
it's like you're a horrible person or something, but I think...
It's just like whenever you're comparing, if you
have the option.
If you have the option to, like there's nothing, like, you're not it's not impossible. Basically, it's not to where you should just continue doing something just because you've already messed up once. Like, It's always right to start doing what you feel you might want to do for your future spouse from that time forward versus having regrets. Yeah, so,
but, okay, so then are there things, the other part of this question was, are there things we wish were different about our courtship? For example, things beyond our control that we wish were different, like that we would have changed about our relationship. Yeah. So that was a part like what we could have changed, but then this is asking like that we wish were different, things that maybe weren't in our control. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you had said like in the notes.
Want to talk about that? No, I know what it is, but I was going to let you go.
Parental oversight a little bit maybe. Like we were definitely grateful for my parents' involvement, but maybe there was like a little
Basically, we ourselves might have different parental oversight guidelines for ourselves. But again,
okay, here's this point that I think we were going to bring up at a later time, but I think it's really good to bring up now too. Was like at this marriage conference we went to last year, they talked about things in your marriage.
Yes, I know where you're going with this.
Go with it, because I forget all the points.
Oh, okay. Basically, like Jill's saying, there was a marriage conference where this point really helped us, that there's some things in leaving and cleaving as a couple, starting your own family, you want to, with respect to your own backgrounds, there's certain things you want to accept from your family backgrounds, or certain things you want to reject from your family backgrounds, And other things you might want to recycle, meaning like you like them, but you might want to put your own spin on them. And that's something that I thought was really helpful in just how you kind of move from two separate family backgrounds to establishing your own standards as a family.
So I think this would be one of those things, maybe recycle.
Recycle.
Not reject, but recycle.
Yeah, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, basically.
We appreciate it, but maybe like recycle it. So it might look different in our family, the parental involvement. Also important to note that we recognize there are different levels of parental oversight depending on certain things. So moving into the next part of that with our own kids, definitely like
I think there's a positive correlation between the level of support
you're giving your child,
physical, financial support you're giving, and the degree of oversight and freedom to give unsolicited advice that you have. There's a positive correlation there. So
like we don't have an age for dating, like, oh, you're allowed to date at this age yet. Of course, we don't have it all figured out. Our kids are 5 and 3. Like, we don't even know everything about that yet.
I don't know about kindergarten relationships.
Like we ever will. But anyways, so, yeah, the age and stage of life definitely matters. For example, if the kid's 16 and they live at home versus 19 and they're still somewhat supported by you in college versus 24 and completely out on their own, like paying their own utilities, healthcare, all of that kind of stuff, that is going to be different. It's going to look different in each of those stages. So, yeah, if, like Derek said,
if
the positive
17,
correlation between support you're giving your child and the degree of unsolicited advice you're able to give. So if parents are supporting them, they have more rights to offer unsolicited advice.
Yeah, if you have a 17-year-old child, like, you're legally responsible for that person. Like, you want to know more who their friends are, because if they turn up missing, that's on you as a parent.
Yeah.
Like
basically, if they're living at home, we might be a little bit more involved, but they'd also be free to be out on their own as an adult too. Like, we recognize that. If they're out on their own, these are my notes here. I put, we may not expect them to get permission before dating someone either, though.
Yeah, it might be nice if, like, we don't have daughters, but if they were like, hey.
Yeah, I think if we have daughters, it might be a little bit different too.
True, yeah.
I don't know, like.
And I feel like a lot of.
Even in the culture.
Being a younger person and, you're a young woman, you probably, regardless of how your parents were, you would feel a certain level of security if your dad wanted to, like, was concerned about, like, this guy you were dating, and you're like, hey, Dad, can I bring this guy over? I want to know about
my sons, the girls too.
No, I know, but I'm just saying because, I'm saying, like, you would feel a level of security if, basically, like, you can throw your dad under the bus instead of, like, the guy or yourself, and not feel awkward if you say, hey, can I bring this guy over for dinner? And then can you ask him some questions that might be harder for me to ask him, and have, like a lot of girls like that. So
yeah,
maybe you do, maybe you don't, but
it's nice to have the cop out at least too.
Yeah, but, like,
if you want it.
Yeah, and then, like, for our sons, like, I would want to, like, and again, I feel like it's important to realize that you don't just arrive at a stage in life where you're dating someone, but you've raised a child from, like, birth, and hopefully you have a foundation in a relationship to have more of, like, an organic, like, friendship, parent relationship once they're adults. And hopefully, like, your son would be like, hey, Dad, like, I think you really like this girl. Like, what do you think about...
Yeah, we want them to be confident individuals who maybe they would get advice from another trusted adult or something, even if it's not us. Like, but to feel the freedom that if they want to get advice from us or ask our opinion or something, that they can. Now, of course, like we said, that would be totally different if they're, like, 16 under our roof. We're going to expect certain things of them. Like, no, you have to, like, ask permission to go on a date, or you have to, like, whatever.
Plus, I feel like whatever their perceived, like, whatever response they think that you're going to give might affect whether or not that they try and get your response or your input in the first place. If they think they can ask you a question or your opinion and you don't take it, and if they think you're going to, like, attack them or accuse them of, like, of not going with what they want you to do, they might not even bring it up to you in the first place. But
yeah, so you would just want to have a whole good communication level with your kids too.
A good relationship overall, I feel like is
and
important.
then like some things that we would encourage our kids to do would be encourage our kids to like think about how they want to handle dating before they get there, to prevent making emotional decisions.
You don't want to be forced with a decision in the moment. Like you don't want to be alone with a girl and she's like, hey baby, my parents aren't home, and be like, is this something I do want to do, or I don't want to do?
Like encourage them to even just write down their standards before they're even like in a dating relationship. Like kind of get an idea, get a framework for like, it doesn't mean you're gonna have to stick to those exactly, because things may change too, but like at least have like a framework, an idea for what you want. Like process that, write it out, like what do you think would be a good idea, and then if they want to talk with us about it, like we'd be open to like talking with them about that too. But and then encourage them to date somebody who holds this similar standards. And even then, like one of you may differ on something, so you can talk about that. But I think talking about it beforehand is good, because then you kind of know how to gauge it. Like if you're meeting somebody, you could be like, hey, like, do we align on these things? You can kind of gauge that, so that when you can be on the same page going into it, like you said, like not feeling pressured for something that the other isn't comfortable with. It just helps you.
There's certain things you're going to know about someone before you're in a dating relationship with them. Hopefully you would know before you're dating them, is this someone who wants to be a virgin until they're married? Or is this someone that like I could potentially get a relationship with, and I don't know what they're okay with.
They're pushing the boundaries all the time, or you kind of tell a lot.
Especially those big things like
who their friends are too. I think too, you can kind of gauge that a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors.
But then also like you want to encourage them to go into dating with the understanding that it's not just for fun. Like that's what we would encourage our kids. Like it's kind of, there's a potential for marriage there. And maybe we were both raised that way.
We were both raised that way, and it may not be that you would get married right away, but my parents dated each other like because they thought they could potentially get married to each other.
Doesn't mean you have to date.
They were 16, so they ended up dating for 5 years until they were 21 and got married. But they kind of instilled in my brother and I the same principle that like, regardless of how old you are, look to date people who you could potentially get married to.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that you can't get to know someone before you date them either, though. Like, I think it's important, like we did. Like, I grilled you.
You would have to like know
I grilled, whether you want to date them even. So I think that's where, like, when I was courting or dating or whatever, like, we had this whole, like, pre-courtship thing where basically, like...
Friendship.
No, because I didn't talk to other guys like that. I hated when my friends called it, we're just friends. And I'm like, are you just friends, like, to the same level with this guy as you are with, a million other people?
Yeah, it wasn't just, like, a
That's why you have to, like, see,
But that was, like, a different scenario because I was in a different country.
You have to define it, though, somehow.
Yeah, DTR.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, anyways. So, there's, like, a pre-dating, maybe. Pre-dating? Where you like get to know the person before you're like getting to know the person more officially. Where like I think there's like a pre-dating where you like get to know the person kind of like hush hush. Then you get to know the person and you're like telling other people that you're still getting to know each other. There's not like a certain level of commitment there, but there is, because if you were cheating on your girlfriend, like cheating in like a light sense, like I'm going on dates with the two girls at the same time.
And they don't know it.
And they don't know. That's, like, generally not acceptable.
I did not do that.
So, I'm just saying, like, there's, but then, so there's, like, pre, and then there's, like, date, and then there's, like, engagement.
It's more complicated even than I thought it was, even as we're talking about.
So, yeah.
The on-ramp to your dating might be longer or shorter depending on the history of your own relationship. Meaning, like, if you've known each other since you were kids, it might be different then.
But you still have to ask those questions, even then.
Well, yeah, but, like... It's going to be a little bit different than our situation where we didn't know each other at all before that.
Yeah. So, basically, like my dad said, like somebody told him a long time ago, don't date anybody you wouldn't consider marrying.
That's what my parents told me.
Yeah. So, something like that probably would be good. And then, again, the degree to which we would encourage them to do these things or to make them a requirement would probably be the degree to which we are still financially supporting them. Speaking of our kids. So like, yeah, if they're at home, it's going to look a lot different than if they're in college, somewhat out on their own. If they want to support themselves, be out on their own at 18 and all that, like that's going to look different too. So if they don't want our advice, like that's their thing. But anyways, yeah.
Yeah.
That's where it is. So these are our thoughts. Again, we're not there, so we don't judge us too much. Like we're not.
More of a thought exercise.
This is hypothetical and just based on our own experience with dating, courting. You dated before we got married, but it was still with the knowledge of like, with the understanding that like.
Dated people other than you, because I did date you before we were married.
Yeah. No, but like even when you dated, it was still kind of it wasn't like totally like.
No, we had the understanding.
Date for fun.
We weren't doing it for like physical reasons. It was like, more, just to figure things out. But
it did look very different than my version of like courting, dating, whatever.
And I think the difference is like we said before, like the parental oversight.
Yeah, but to some degree, mine looked like, what our dating relationship looked like more so than what yours had looked like before.
Yes.
Yes. So, it's just, Now his phone's ringing.
Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Okay.
Extended warranty of my car that I
Anyways,
sold.
Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out our blog for other Q&As. And be sure to also comment below or comment on our blog, and we will look through those comments for more questions for future Q&As. Check out our blog, dillardfamily.com, and follow us on social media.